So I would assume you're a little bit on the other side of the aisle here. Maybe your concerns about climate change aren't quite as strong as Senator Toomey's. Do you share, though, any broader concern about policy drift here?
I do not, and that's because I've seen Sarah Bloom Raskin in action, and most of the questions on climate change were directed to her. She was the chief banking regulator in the state of Maryland during the financial meltdown. And she got rave reviews from our community banks who are calling me now to say they strongly support her. And I would remind everybody that she was unanimously confirmed by Republicans and Democrats for her previous position on the board of governors of the Federal Reserve, and unanimously confirmed for as Deputy Secretary of Treasury. So I do not share the concerns that have been expressed by Senator Toomey.
Remind me procedurally, for all of these nominees, these are Biden's nominees. They would have the full support, obviously, of the Democrats who are in this process. But do you have the threshold of votes necessary to approve all of them, or would you need some Republican support?
Well, we would like to get some Republican support, and we're talking to our Republican colleagues. And I'm confident that some of these nominees to the Federal Reserve will have bipartisan support. But the answer to your question is, at the end of the day, if Republicans do not support these nominations, we can get them passed with Democratic votes under our current rules.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a moment. What would you say your current concerns are with the Fed? Do you think that they need to be more aggressive in fighting inflation right now, or are you worried that they might be doing too much?
Well, I support the actions being taken and the message being sent by the nominee to be chairman once again, Powell, where he underlined the importance of the dual mandate for the Fed, full employment and price stability. And I'm confident that both he and these nominees have confirmed will abide by those two mandates.
Do you think inflation is a problem that the Fed needs to be fighting, or is it something that the administration needs to be tackling, or do you think it's going to kind of be a passing fad here?
Well, I think the biggest issue with respect to price increases has been supply chain disruptions. And we're seeing some improvement on that front, but we continue to work that piece of it. And so I think as that part of this problem and price squeeze is challenged, for example, the shortage in semiconductor chips leading to higher prices for cars, those sorts of things, I think, are the primary drivers that we need to continue to deal with. And I will say another piece of legislation that we're working on would go a long way toward addressing some of those supply chain issues.
And I guess if I could put it differently, would you agree that your concern is more that the Fed could be too aggressive in responding to inflation because you think the problem will work itself out?
I think there's a risk that they could be overly aggressive, but I do think it's something that the Fed needs to continue to monitor carefully. And I do support the statements that have been made by the current chairman and Powell, and he was asked about this at his hearing, and I appreciated his answers. Any
final concern that you had that you heard today, or do you? I suppose I'm just assuming you broadly support all three of these candidates and kind of think they can do no wrong.
Well, look, I had a chance to review their backgrounds and have discussions with them. And so I do believe that they will adhere to, the mandate of the Fed and their responsibilities. So, of course, we all have questions about how people will perform, but they've certainly answered the question satisfactorily to my mind.
One final question for you, which we're sort of asking everyone these days, but to my knowledge, you don't actually own individual stocks, or you certainly haven't traded in them lately to speak of. Is that a philosophical thing, or would you have any reason not to support a potential bill that would outlaw members of Congress from trading and, to some extent, even owning stocks?
So I support the legislation. There are numerous bills that have been introduced on preventing members from owning and trading in stocks. And so I support that legislation. I haven't decided which of them are to co-sponsor. I'll be looking at them and making that decision shortly. But you're right. No, I do not currently own any stocks. I decided years ago to divest of the small holdings that I did have. And I think it's just cleaner that way, and as a result, doesn't raise questions from the public as to intentions on any piece of legislation.